So today I've got this 2008 Acura RDX, and it's got a complaint for the battery dying after it sits for a week or so. And I've traced it down to this 230 milliamp drain. You can see my meter leads are connected to the negative battery post and the terminal with it disconnected. And when I remove it and I reconnect it, you can see that it goes almost up towards an amp, and then eventually it comes back down to the 230 milliamp range. And I've traced it down to this fuse over here. It's a 10 amp, and when I pull it, then you can see that the drain comes down to nothing. So it just happens to be the first fuse I pulled out of this underhood fuse box. But when I reinstall it, the drain comes back. And so I'm going to show you guys how I go about diagnosing a parasitic drain and the flow that we use in diagnostics to get to the component that's causing it. So this right here, this fuse, by the way, is the backup fuse, and it's fuse number 23. It's a 10 amp, and I'm going to show you on a wiring schematic here where that power distribution leads from that specific fuse, and how we use process of elimination to figure out what component is actually causing it. So you can see that the drain is back, obviously, after putting the fuse in, and that it slowly comes back down to that 230 milliamp range, which is about a quarter amp. So here we go. I'm going to show you the wiring schematic next, and kind of go over the flow of diagnostics first, and then we're going to attack it on the vehicle and get to the bottom of it. Okay, so you can see here on the wiring schematic at the top, we have fuse number 23 from the underhood fuse box, and it directly powers the MICU, which is the multiplex integrated control unit, which is basically the fuse box. And from there, it goes from the P5 connection at the MICU and the Q1, and distributes down to the power mirror memory control unit, the gauge control module, the driving position memory switch. And from the Q1, it goes down to the under dash junction box, where it splits off into 7 other control units. And you can see on this next schematic here, that's going to be the mobilizer, the Acura link control unit, the navigation unit, the navigation display, the hands-free link, the audio unit, and the power seat control unit. So if we go back to the first one, if I disconnect connector P5 or Q1 and the drain goes away, then we're going to know that it's the MICU that's faulty. If the drain remains on one of them, then that's the next step. So connector P, number 5, is the green fused power supply to it. And if we disconnect this connector, then we know it's going to be one of the first 3 units. If we go to the Q1 connector, it's going to be the green fuse, or I'm sorry, the green wire. Fuse number 23 powers it, and it's on terminal number 1. So if we disconnect the Q connector, then it's going to be one of the 7 units that it powers that will be causing it. So when we remove the fuse box, and behind it, we're going to see these connectors. And if you look at the very top, number 8 and number 10 are the connectors that we're going to be working with. That's P and Q. So P will be number 8 and Q will be number 10. And depending on which one we disconnect, if there is a remaining drain, then we're going to follow that connector and what components it powers. And that's how we're going to narrow it down. Okay, so now before we can actually diagnose the drain, you can see that I have a 2 amp draw with the driver door open, but I need the door open so I can work, and it's because the dome lights are staying on, and that is because the door switch is telling the system that the door is open, and so the dome light needs to be on. So what we got to do is take the door ajar switch out, and by just taking the hold down screw out from the B pillar, you're not grounding the switch any longer, and therefore the dome lights will go off and the vehicle thinks that the door is closed. So you can either just keep it connected and remove it from the mounting hole, or you can just disconnect it completely. But in any case, you take this step, and what's going to happen is our drain's going to come back down from the 2 amps back down to the 230 millivolts. So we can work on disconnecting other connections at the fuse box and still be able to narrow it down. Okay, so in order to remove the fuse box, or at least unmount it, I'm going to take a few steps here. One of them is this kick panel is going to have to come out. And in order to get the kick panel out, we're going to have to take the driver door floor trim out. So right here, you got to lift up the weather stripping a little bit and kind of remove it out of the way. And then this trim will pop up pretty easily. And you can get that out. And then come back over here to the kick panel, and you're going to have to use just a little bit of force, but we got to remove the kick panel. And then from there you can get a good view of what the fuse box looks like and how it's mounted there with the 3 M6 screws. So we got to take this trim out. It's pretty easy. You just quarter turn these 2 clips, and the trim just pulls right out. But that gives us a real clear view of the fuse box, and even more so, you can see the 3 M6 bolts over here that we're gonna remove. These 2 you can see, the third one's way over here in the corner, and it's almost necessary to use a universal 10 millimeter socket to get that one out. So once we get these loose, we can pull the fuse box down. And I lost the video of me actually pulling it down, but here's a clip of the connectors, and where the 2 arrows are is our P and Q connectors, basically in location 8 and 10 that we saw on the diagram. So I disconnected those, and when I disconnect both, I have no drain, so the MICU is good. And when I install the P connector, I don't have a drain. When I install the Q connector, then I have a drain. So here we are at the lower schematic, and now what I want to do, since the Q connector causes it, I know it's going to be one of these 7 control units. I want to start with something that's somewhat easier to get to, so I'm going to start by taking the navigation display out and the navigation unit, and then since I'll be there, I'll go with the audio unit next after that if the drain isn't figured out by then. So here we're going to start taking the navigation display out. You got to pop this trim out over here. It's fairly simple. There's another clip at the far right corner over there, so you got to pop that trim off and that clip. Once we get these off, we got to take the far left trim out, and that's where this cell phone holder is that someone stuck on there. But that one pops off pretty easily, and underneath that we're going to find our screws holding the trim down for the nav display. So we can go ahead and start taking those out, and then that will allow me to pry up on the trim for the navigation display, and we'll be able to take that off. There's only a couple screws here, and most of the trim here seems to pop off fairly easy. So here we gotta gently pry underneath, and the entire trim comes off, and then we want to disconnect these connectors back here. So now by disconnecting these, we're eliminating the navigation unit, and if the drain remains, then obviously we're going to pull out the display and disconnect that. And when I'm done here, you can clearly see that the drain is still 230 milliamps. So by disconnecting this unit, didn't change anything. And so here's a navigation display, and we're just going to go ahead and unscrew it and disconnect it and see where we are with the drain. Unfortunately, when it comes to drains, this is the process. You choose the units that are easier to get to and hope that one of them is going to be the one. And the ones that are difficult to get to, you want to save those, for the end. But there's no real tried and true way to know exactly which one it is. It's just process of elimination. So this display is ready to come out, and I'm going to go ahead and disconnect it. Okay, so by disconnecting the navigation display, I didn't achieve what I was looking for because the drain remained. So now we're going to take the audio unit out, and we're going to start by prying this trim piece up for the shifter up, and then we're going to pop these side trims right off. They're actually not too hard to get off. On this one I just pulled, and they basically just pull right off. So once we get those two off, then we can start to unscrew the audio unit. It's held together by 4 screws and a couple on each side, and that's to release the bracket from the mounting. Once we get those out of the way, then we're also going to release the screws for this the switch plate for the heated seats, and those are just a couple of Phillips screws. So we want to loosen all that up, and then we're going to come back to the rear of the console, and we're going to pry the cup holder plate up and move that out of the way. So first I gotta get these screws out, and then now we can pry back here in the rear, and that should release this whole cup holder assembly with the trim. And once we get that out of the way, we'll be able to remove the heated seat switch and then the audio unit. Alright, so we want to leave the shifter plate just loosely on there and kind of twist around this and get it out. Okay, so now that's out of the way, we can go ahead and pop the heated switch plate out. And I don't really even disconnect it, just leave it to the side, and now the audio unit can come out. The shifter may be in the way. You may have to move the shifter down to neutral. If you do that, make sure you put the e-brake on and a block of wood on the wheels to keep it from rolling. And here I got it out, and I'm going to disconnect the main connector here with the power coming from connector Q. And I'm doing this from the passenger side, so I've got the door open, so I've got to close it because I'm creating a drain by having this door open. And when I come back here and take a look at the meter, I've still got a drain, and it's just recovering from the door being open, but although the vid cuts off, it comes back down to 230 milliamps. So now that I got the audio unit out of the way, and the navigation display and the navigation unit, and I still have a 230 milliamp drain. So here's all the units that are marked off, and now I've got 4 remaining: the immobilizer, the Acura link control unit, the hands-free control unit, and the power seat control unit. So I think what I'm going to do from here is go for the power seat because it's a little bit easier to get to. So that's the next step, is to disconnect that. Okay, so here I am under the driver's seat, and I've got the seat control unit disconnected. And, it seems like an easier module to disconnect because you just basically raise up the seat, slide it back, and you can get to the connectors pretty easily. So I've got it disconnected, and when I recheck the drain over here, I'm gonna show you guys that it really didn't make any difference. So I've got quite a few things disconnected now, and this seat unit is one of them. And we still have a, says 220 milliamp drain. It fluctuates a little bit. So here we are with the 7 units. I got 3 more: the hands-free link, the Acura link, and the mobilizer. And now that I've disconnected almost everything, it's got to be one of these 3. And I think I'm going to go for the hands-free link because it's right there underneath the cup holder. And then if that doesn't do it, then I would go with the other 2. So here we are at the hands-free link, and I'm going to disconnect the connector here. So we've got that disconnected, and when I check the drain back over here, then what do you know? It's down to nothing. So it was the hands-free link the whole time. So now that I figured it out, here's a close-up of that part number. It turns out that Honda discontinued selling this part. They no longer make it, and we didn't know if we could opt for a used one or not. But in any case, customer said that they would rather just leave it disconnected. And I looked at the possible ramifications of leaving it disconnected, but it seems like it only affects the hands-free part of the vehicle and nothing else. So we left it disconnected. It's been quite a while since, and customer said there's no drain, there's no complaints, and they haven't missed having this module connected. So that's an option for people out there if they run into the same problem. But there you go, guys. This was from beginning to end how to diagnose an electrical parasitic drain on a 2008 Acura RDX, and we finally got to the bottom of it. Thanks for watching, guys.